Commander Elena Torres had seen her share of strange requests during her 5 years running Deep Space Station Arcturus, but this one took the cake. Standing before her, covered in crystalline scales that sparkled like diamond dust, were 3 massive frost stalkers, apex predators from the ice planet Glacius 4. Their breath came out in clouds of supercooled vapor that froze instantly in the station's regulated atmosphere. "You want us to babysit?" Elena managed to keep her voice steady, though her heart was racing. The largest frost stalker, who had introduced herself as Crystalline Songinstorm, bobbed her head in what Elena had learned was their species' version of an emphatic yes. "We have observed your kind," the alien's translator rendered her ethereal whistling into crisp English. "Humans alone share our understanding of protecting the young, even those not of their own species." Behind her, 2 smaller frost stalkers, barely the size of Earth tigers but already capable of shredding military-grade armor, played what looked suspiciously like tag. Elena's second-in-command, Marcus Wong, was already pulling up statistics on his tablet. "Commander, according to xenobiological records, frost stalker cubs require temperatures below -50°C to thrive. We'd need to completely retrofit the auxiliary cargo bay." "The Great Migration cannot wait," Crystalline Songinstorm interrupted, her crystalline scales shifting colors with urgency. "Our entire species must traverse the void between stars to reach new hunting grounds. The cubs are too young to survive the journey, and our ancient nesting grounds are no longer safe." Elena studied the playing cubs. Despite their deadly capabilities, she couldn't help noticing how they chirped and tumbled like excited puppies. One had discovered its reflection in a wall panel and was attempting to challenge it to a play fight. "How many cubs are we talking about?" Elena asked, already knowing she was going to say yes. It was the same instinct that had led her to rescue a litter of wolverines during her ranger's training on Earth, that uniquely human inability to say no to any baby animal, no matter how dangerous. 17, came the reply, and Elena heard Marcus choke on his coffee. "They must be kept safe and stimulated for 3 standard months while we secure the new territories." Elena was already planning the logistics in her head. They'd need to convert Cargo Bay 3, requisition industrial-grade cooling units, train a specialized care team. The station's board of directors would have a fit, but then again, they always did when she made these kinds of decisions. "There are other species who think us mad," Crystalline Songinstorm continued, her tone carrying what might have been amusement. "They say entrusting our young to aliens, especially to humans who seem to lack proper survival instincts, is a sign of weakness." Elena couldn't help but laugh. "With all due respect, those other species have never seen a human rescue team dive into floodwaters to save kittens, or rehabilitate injured bears, or—" She paused, remembering her own history, "or spend 3 months bottle-feeding orphaned wolverine cubs while nursing frostbite." The frost stalker's scales shifted to a deep blue of approval. "Precisely. Your species possesses a unique madness, the ability to see past terrifying exteriors to the vulnerable life within. We have watched your information networks, seen your people risk death to save creatures that could kill them. This is why we trust you with our most precious ones." As if to emphasize the point, one of the cubs bounded over and bumped its head against Elena's leg, nearly knocking her over. Instead of flinching away, she found herself automatically reaching down to scratch behind its crystalline audio sensors, exactly where she would pet a cat. The cub's scales rippled with pleasure, and it emitted a sound remarkably similar to a purr. "Marcus," Elena called out, still petting the surprisingly warm crystal scales, "start requisition paperwork for industrial cooling units. And contact Dr. Rivera in xenobiology, tell her Christmas came early this year." She turned back to Crystalline Songinstorm. "We'll need detailed information about their dietary needs, behavioral patterns, and any specific care requirements." The frost stalker's scales shimmered with what Elena was learning to recognize as their version of relief. "You understand, then, why we came to humans?" Elena watched as the third cub tried to steal Marcus's tablet, apparently convinced it was a new toy. Her second-in-command, despite his earlier protests, was already playing keep-away with the deadly but adorable creature, a grin spreading across his face. "Yeah," she said, "I think I do. We might be the only species crazy enough to look at the galaxy's deadliest predators and think, ah, babies." She paused, then added with a smile, "Welcome to Arcturus Daycare for Dangerous Darlings." 2 weeks into Operation Frost Nursery, Commander Elena Torres was beginning to understand why some species thought humans were insane. She stood in the observation room overlooking Cargo Bay 3, now transformed into what her crew affectionately called the Icebox, watching 17 Froststalker cubs playing what appeared to be a complex game of freeze tag, literally. The massive Cargo Bay, chilled to a brisk -60°C, had been converted into a winter wonderland. Industrial cooling units hummed constantly, maintaining the frigid temperature the cubs needed to thrive. The walls and floor were covered in specialized polymer padding that could withstand both extreme cold and the cubs' crystalline claws. Various obstacles, climbing structures, and enrichment devices filled the space, all designed to keep young apex predators entertained. "Commander," Dr. Maya Rivera's voice crackled over the intercom, her excitement barely contained. "You need to see this. Frostbite, the smallest cub, just demonstrated a hunting technique we've never documented before." Elena smiled at the use of the nickname. Despite her initial insistence on maintaining scientific objectivity, Maya had been the first to start naming the cubs. Each name was technically a designation based on their unique crystal patterns, but somehow they'd ended up with cubs named Frostbite, Blizzard, Aurora, and, Elena's personal favorite, Sir Shivers-a-Lot. Coming down, Elena replied, already heading for the airlock where the extreme cold survival suits were stored. These specialized suits, originally designed for exploring ice planets, had become standard wear for the human caretakers. As she suited up, Elena's tablet chimed with an urgent message from Station Control. "Commander, we're detecting unusual solar activity from the nearby binary system," the message read. "Potential for severe radiation storms in the next 48 hours. Standard protection protocols may be insufficient." Elena felt her stomach tighten. The station's normal radiation shielding would protect the human crew, but the cubs' unique crystalline biology made them particularly sensitive to solar radiation. The cargo bay's additional shielding might not be enough. Stepping into the frigid environment of the nursery, Elena was immediately surrounded by excited cubs. Sir Shivers-a-Lot, the most outgoing of the group, bounded over to headbutt her suit affectionately. The force would have knocked over a less experienced handler, but Elena had learned to brace herself. "Maya," she called out to the xenobiologist who was recording data on a frost-resistant tablet, "we need to talk contingencies." As they discussed the approaching solar storm, Elena watched the cubs at play. Frostbite was indeed demonstrating a fascinating hunting pattern, using their natural ability to control local temperature to create ice barriers and herd imaginary prey. The other cubs were watching intently, learning from their cleverer sibling. "The radiation levels will be highest in the outer sections," Maya explained, showing Elena the projected storm path. "We could move them to the central core, but we'd lose the industrial cooling capacity," Elena finished. The station's core wasn't equipped with the specialized cooling systems they'd installed in the cargo bay. "How long can they survive at normal station temperatures?" "Maybe 6 hours. After that, their crystal matrices begin to destabilize." Maya's voice was grim. "The storm is expected to last at least 12 hours. Elena watched as Aurora and Blizzard collaborated to create an intricate ice sculpture, their natural abilities allowing them to manipulate frozen water molecules with remarkable precision. An idea began to form. "What if we didn't fight the heat?" she mused. "Maya, how do frost stalkers regulate their body temperature in the wild?" The xenobiologist's eyes widened as she caught on. "They create localized cold zones. Their crystal matrices can absorb and redirect thermal energy." "But Commander, that's passive cooling. They've never had to actively. We've seen them playing with their abilities, Elena interrupted, gesturing to the ice sculpture. They're learning to control it. What if we taught them to work together, to create a collective cold zone? It was crazy, exactly the kind of plan that made other species question humanity's sanity. Teaching juvenile apex predators to use their natural abilities in a completely new way, under pressure, during a radiation storm? The kind of plan only a human would consider. Over the next hours, Elena and her team worked tirelessly with the cubs. They used games and exercises to encourage the young frost stalkers to coordinate their crystal matrices, creating expanding zones of intense cold. Sir Shivers-a-Lot, living up to his name, proved particularly adept at temperature manipulation, often leading the others in their practice sessions. The radiation alert came sooner than expected. As the station's outer sensors began registering dangerous levels of solar activity, Elena made the call to evacuate the cargo bay. The cubs, now understanding the urgency through some combination of instinct and training, gathered in the central chamber of their new home, the station's most heavily shielded maintenance hub. Temperature rising, Maya reported, watching the readings climb. Currently at -20 degrees Celsius and increasing. Elena stood among the cubs, her suit sensors feeding vital data to Maya's tablet. The young frost stalkers pressed close together, their crystals beginning to pulse with an inner light. The air around them shimmered as they put their practice to use, combining their abilities to create an expanding sphere of intense cold. "It's working," Maya whispered in awe. "They're actually doing it." Temperature in their immediate vicinity stabilizing at -55 degrees Celsius. As the radiation storm raged outside, 17 young frost stalkers, led by a small but determined cub named Frostbite, demonstrated why their species had survived and thrived in some of the harshest environments known to science. And Elena Torres, standing watch over her charges, demonstrated why humans were trusted with such precious responsibility, because only humans would look at an impossible situation and think, well, let's teach the baby ice predators how to make their own igloo. Survival instincts. The first sign that something was wrong came at 0300 station time. Elena was reviewing reports in her office when the environmental alerts started flashing. The temperature in the cub's habitat was rising rapidly, not a gradual increase that might indicate equipment failure, but a sharp spike suggesting deliberate sabotage. "Security team to Cargo Bay 3, she barked into her comm while already running for the habitat. "Maya, status of the cubs?" "They're agitated but safe," Dr. Rivera's voice came through, breathless. "Currently at -30 degrees Celsius and climbing. Primary and secondary cooling systems are offline. Backup systems not responding." Elena's mind raced as she sprinted through the station's corridors. The cubs could maintain their collective cold zone for a few hours, but without the environmental systems, the ambient temperature would eventually overwhelm them. More concerning was the fact that all three cooling systems failing simultaneously couldn't be coincidence. She reached the observation deck to find Maya and Marcus already suited up. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the cubs gathered in their now familiar defensive formation, creating their shared cold zone. Sir Shivers-a-Lot stood at the perimeter, crystalline scales rippling with agitation. "Security sweep shows no unauthorized personnel in the cooling control rooms," Marcus reported, handing Elena her suit. "But they found this." He held up a small device, its surface covered in frost. "It's a remote override module. Someone hacked our environmental controls from inside the station." Elena felt her blood run cold. The cubs weren't the target, she realized. This is about proving a point. Someone's trying to show that humans can't be trusted with other species young. A new alarm blared, the station's internal sensors detecting an unauthorized access to the main power grid. Seconds later, the lights flickered. "They're going for station-wide systems," Marcus said grimly. "If they shut down power to life support, we need to evacuate the cubs," Elena decided. "Maya, what's the status of the maintenance tunnels? The xenobiologist pulled up a schematic on her tablet. The auxiliary tunnels are climate-controlled independently from main systems. They run through the station's core to the emergency shuttle bays. But Commander, moving 17 Froststalker cubs through confined spaces is exactly what someone thinks we won't try, Elena finished. She keyed her comm, security, lock down all primary corridors. Whoever's doing this is about to learn why you don't back humans into a corner when we're protecting young ones. The next 20 minutes were organized chaos. Elena and her team had drilled for emergencies, but moving 17 adolescent apex predators through maintenance tunnels was definitely not in any standard protocol. Yet somehow, whether through their species' legendary intelligence or simply picking up on the humans' urgency, the cubs followed their lead. Single file, Elena called out, leading the way into the tunnel network. The cubs fell into line, with Sir Shivers-a-Lot taking up the rear guard position. Maya and Marcus flanked the group, monitoring temperatures and vital signs. The maintenance tunnels were a maze of narrow passages and tight corners, barely wide enough for the larger cubs. The reduced space actually worked in their favor. It was easier for the young frost stalkers to maintain their collective cold zone in the confined area. They were halfway to the emergency shuttles when Marcus's tablet lit up with new alerts. Power fluctuations in sections 12 through 15, he reported. They're trying to cut off our route. Correction, Maya said, studying her own readings. They're hurting us. These power cuts, they're pushing us toward Cargo Bay 6. Elena smiled grimly. Good. Let them think it's working. She switched to a private channel with station security. Status on our trap? Ready, Commander. We've got teams in position. Whoever's trying to access the power grid will have to route through the auxiliary control room in Cargo Bay 6. The moment they make their move. A crash from behind made Elena spin around. One of the cubs, Aurora, had picked up something in their crystalline sensors. The young frost stalker was pawing at a seemingly solid wall panel, ice crystals forming around their claws. Maya? Elena questioned. The xenobiologist was already scanning the section. There's someone in the walls. The maintenance crawlspaces. They're paralleling our route. Elena didn't hesitate. Aurora, Frostbite, breached that panel. Everyone else, defensive formation. The cubs responded with military precision that would have made their parents proud. As Aurora and Frostbite used their natural abilities to freeze and shatter the wall panel, the others formed a protective circle around their human caretakers. The panel burst inward in a shower of ice crystals, revealing a shocked-looking figure in an environmental suit. Don't move, Elena commanded, as Sir Shivers-a-Lot let out a warning growl that made the maintenance tunnel vibrate. You're caught between 17 juvenile apex predators and the humans crazy enough to care for them. I'd suggest surrendering. The saboteur raised their hands slowly, no doubt realizing that their plan had severely underestimated both human ingenuity and Froststalker intelligence. As security teams converged on their location, Elena couldn't help but notice how the cubs maintained their protective stance around the humans, even after the threat was contained. You know, she said to Maya as they watched the saboteur being led away, I think we just discovered why humans are so good at caring for dangerous young. We're not just crazy enough to try, we're stubborn enough to succeed. Sir Shivers-a-Lot bumped his head against her suit in apparent agreement, leaving a small frost pattern that looked remarkably like a smile. The nature of nurture. News travels fast in space, especially when it involves humans successfully defending a group of alien cubs from sabotage. Within weeks of the incident, Station Arcturus found itself fielding inquiries from various species about their childcare capabilities. What had started as an emergency arrangement with the Frost Stalkers was rapidly evolving into something unprecedented in galactic history. Elena stood in the newly designated Interspecific Nursery Wing, watching as Maya conducted orientation for their latest arrivals, 3 magma dweller caretakers delivering their own young for temporary care. The irony of housing both ice-dwelling and fire-based species in the same facility wasn't lost on her. The thermal isolation fields are holding steady, Marcus reported, checking readings on his tablet. Magma dweller section maintaining at 800 degrees Celsius, frost stalker area at -60 degrees Celsius, and the new void swimmer containment zone at near zero pressure. Engineering says we're pushing the station's environmental systems to their limits, but it's working. And the cubs? Elena asked, though she could already see for herself. Through the various containment fields, young creatures that would normally never interact were engaging in parallel play. The frost stalker cubs were creating elaborate ice sculptures while the magma dweller young practiced shaping molten metal. The void swimmers, looking like abstract collections of starlight, danced in their pressureless chamber. Thriving, Maya answered, joining them after finishing the orientation. We're seeing unprecedented developmental progress across all species. The stimulation of being near other young, even through barriers, seems to accelerate their learning and social development. Elena nodded, remembering how the frost stalker cubs had demonstrated problem-solving abilities far beyond their expected developmental stage during the sabotage incident. Any insights into why humans are so uniquely suited for this role? Maya pulled up a holographic display showing comparative brain scans. It's fascinating, actually. When other species look at dangerous young, their threat recognition centers light up first. But human brains. She highlighted a different neural pathway. We see the nurturing response activate before the fear response. We literally can't help seeing them as babies first, dangerous predators second. That explains a lot about human history with domestication, Marcus mused. We've basically been collecting dangerous animals as pets since we figured out how to walk upright. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the frost stalker enclosure. Sir Shivers-a-Lot had apparently decided that the ice sculpture they were creating needed to be bigger, much bigger. No, not the support beam again, Elena sighed, already heading for her cold suit. I swear, that cub is going to be either an artist or an engineer when they grow up. Just then, a new arrival caught everyone's attention. A delegation of quantum phase entities, beings that existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, had appeared in the observation area. Their translator matrix hummed to life. We have observed your facility's success, their overlapping voices echoed. Our young require specialized care during their probability alignment phase. Previous attempts to entrust them to other species have resulted in unfortunate temporal paradoxes. Elena exchanged looks with her team. Caring for beings that existed in multiple timelines simultaneously would be their biggest challenge yet. But then she watched as Sir Shivers-a-Lot, upon noticing the new visitors, carefully modified their ice sculpture to create what looked suspiciously like a welcome sign. We'd be happy to help, Elena said, already mentally calculating how to modify a containment field for quantum uncertainty. Though I should warn you, we have a rather unconventional approach to childcare. The quantum phase entities of multiple forms rippled in what might have been amusement. We are aware. Your species' particular madness, this ability to care for that which others fear, has been observed across several probability streams. In 73.2% of potential futures, this facility becomes a crucial nexus of interspecies cooperation. Maya was practically bouncing with excitement at the research possibilities, while Marcus had already pulled up the station's power distribution charts to figure out how to accommodate quantum uncertain beings. There is something else you should know, the entities continued. We have observed that the young ones in your care are developing abilities beyond their species' norms. Your human capacity for encouraging growth through nurturing, rather than through survival pressure, is unique. As if to demonstrate this point, one of the younger magma dwellers successfully created their first controlled plasma formation, a feat usually not achieved until much later in their development. The Frost Stalker cubs immediately responded with an intricate ice display that mimicked the plasma's pattern, showing an appreciation for art that their species wasn't known for. We're not just keeping them safe, Elena realized, watching the interaction. We're teaching them to see beauty in differences, to solve problems creatively rather than just through instinct. Precisely, the entities agreed. In nurturing the galaxy's most dangerous young, humanity is inadvertently shaping its future. Your inability to resist caring for any creature, regardless of its potential threat, may be your species' greatest contribution to galactic society. Elena watched as Sir Shiversalot finally perfected their ice sculpture, a crystalline representation of the station itself, complete with tiny figures of both humans and various alien species working together. In that moment, she understood something profound about humanity's role in the galaxy. We're not just crazy enough to care for dangerous young, she said. We're crazy enough to believe that caring itself can change the universe, one cub at a time. Legacy of Care. 3 months had passed since the first Frost Stalker cubs arrived at Station Arcturus, and Elena Torres stood in the observation deck watching the massive crystalline ships of the returning Frost Stalker fleet drop out of hyperspace. The sight was breathtaking, like watching a constellation of diamond stars suddenly appear against the void. But Elena's attention was focused on the 17 young Frost Stalkers behind her, their crystalline scales shimmering with anticipation. They've grown so much, Maya whispered, recording final developmental data on her tablet. Indeed, the cubs were nearly twice the size they'd been upon arrival, their crystal matrices more complex, their abilities more refined. Sir Shiversalot, still the unofficial leader of the group, had created an elaborate ice mural on the observation deck's wall, a story told in frost patterns of their time at the station. The happy reunion, however, was about to become complicated. Just as the Frost Stalker ships began their docking procedures, Marcus burst onto the deck, his face grave. "Commander, we've got a situation," he reported. "The Hegemony Council is demanding an emergency session. They're claiming the Frost Stalkers' new territory violates their expansion treaties. There's talk of military action." Elena felt her heart sink. The Hegemony, a coalition of resource-hungry species, had been looking for an excuse to challenge the Frost Stalkers' claim to the resource-rich ice worlds they'd migrated to. But before she could respond, an alert sounded from the nursery wing. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, the station AI announced. Detecting magma dweller, void swimmer, and quantum phase entity signatures. Through the observation windows, Elena watched as vessels representing every species whose young they'd cared for began appearing. The Hegemony War Fleet, which had been lurking at the edge of the system, was suddenly faced with an unprecedented gathering of the galaxy's most formidable species. They came, Sir Shiversalot's translator whispered, the young Frost Stalkers' crystals pulsing with joy. "Just like we asked." Elena turned to the cub in surprise. "You contacted them?" "We all did," came the reply. "During play sessions, we learned to communicate across the containment fields. The Void Swimmer Young taught us to send messages through quantum space. The Magma Dwellers showed us how to encode them in thermal patterns. We made friends." Maya's tablet was practically smoking as she tried to record everything. "Commander, do you realize what this means? The cubs haven't just learned to coexist, they've created their own diplomatic network." A transmission from the Hegemony fleet cut through the moment. "This is a territorial dispute under galactic law. Other species are advised to withdraw." The response came not from the assembled fleets, but from the nursery wing. Every young being in the station's care, Frost Stalkers, Magma Dwellers, Void Swimmers, and Quantum Phase entities, began broadcasting in unison. Their message, translated through multiple matrices, was simple but profound. "We reject the premise of this conflict. We have learned a better way." The Frost Stalker cubs moved as one, creating a massive holographic ice display visible from space, a recreation of their nursery wing, showing different species living and growing together. The magma-dweller young added their own artistic flourish, their plasma formations dancing with the ice crystals in impossible harmony. Void swimmer children wove patterns of starlight through the display, while young quantum phase entities made the entire scene exist in multiple beautiful possibilities simultaneously. Humans taught us, Sir Shiverzalot's voice rang out, joined by every young voice in the nursery, that strength comes not from territory or resources, but from the connections we build. They showed us that the greatest power is in choosing to nurture rather than destroy. Elena watched in awe as the hegemony fleet, faced with this unprecedented display of unity in the combined presence of multiple powerful species, began to withdraw. The crisis was being averted not through military might or political maneuvering, but through the wisdom of children who had learned to see beyond their species' traditional boundaries. Crystalline Song in Storm, arriving on the observation deck with the other Froststalker parents, surveyed the scene with evident pride. "When we entrusted our young to humans," she said, "some called it madness. They said humans' tendency to nurture dangerous creatures would weaken our children. Instead, you have taught them something far more valuable than survival skills." "What's that?" Elena asked, even as Sir Shiverzalot pressed against her side one last time. "You taught them that the universe is not divided into predators and prey, strong and weak, us and them. You showed them that anyone can be, as you humans say, friend-shaped, if you're brave enough to try." As Elena watched the young ones say goodbye to each other, Froststalkers creating ice sculptures for magma-dweller friends, void swimmers dancing one last time with quantum phase entity playmates, she understood that they had created something revolutionary. In trying to provide safe haven for dangerous young, they had inadvertently created the first generation of truly interspecies diplomats. "You know," Maya said, reviewing her final data, "other species think we're crazy for seeing past the dangerous exteriors to the children within. But maybe that's humanity's gift to the galaxy, the ability to see potential where others see only threat." Sir Shiverzalot, preparing to leave with their parents, made one final addition to their ice mural. In perfect English letters formed from frost crystals, they wrote, "Humanity's greatest strength is not their technology or their adaptability. It's their capacity to love what others fear, to nurture what others would destroy, and to believe that caring for someone else's children can change the course of stars." Elena smiled, touching the icy letters. "Well," she said, "someone has to be crazy enough to believe in a better galaxy. Might as well be us." Last edited 3 minutes ago.